Hi there, it's Linda here. Thanks so much for joining me today as I play with my new Altenew wallpaper art stamp set. I'm using Ranger watercolour paper today. Maybe that's why things just didn't go right from the very beginning. I'm not sure. I usually would use my Strathmore Bristol Smooth, but I had run out. So I went to the Ranger, and it's a great product. I've used it before and found it to be a lovely cardstock. But today I had trouble, just seemed to be blurring. The water just was carrying the colour outside of each petal. And yes, I haven't heat embossed this, so there's no reason why the water should just stay within each petal. Maybe I was adding too much and it was just spreading and blurring too far. But I started off anyway with my 3 distress inks. What have I got? I've got Spun Sugar, Worn Lipstick and Festive Berries. And I just worked my way from the lightest to the darkest on each petal and adding water as I'm going, and perhaps it got too wet, but you can see petal number 1 there is already starting to blur onto the petal that's to the right of it, and that seemed to be the case today with each petal. As they tended to dry out, the colour just spread further than I wanted it to. So I did have to come in and save my flower by using some Zig Clean Colour Real Brush markers instead of the distress inks. I could have persevered with the distress inks. I don't think it was their fault. I think it was perfectly all of my own problem. I was the one who caused the problem. My watercolouring skills perhaps need some refining, and it's been a while since I have watercoloured, so I got out my Carmine red and yellow and managed to end up with a flower that looked like this in the end. So I'll show you what I then did on flower number 1. I'll go through the process here on the second flower. So I lay down the colour from the Carmine red straight onto the cardstock, and then using my aqua brush or watercolour brush I move that colour around on the petal, and I'm using a tissue constantly to blot up the water so that it's not blurring and going too far further afield than I want it to. And that was quite possibly the problem with flower number 1. Even when you look at flower number 1 now, you can see how the water has bled out from that bottom petal. And I will fussy cut these so it won't be hopefully as noticeable once they're on my card. So I do keep taking away colour and moisture with my tissue, and I am going to add the yellow zig marker to the edges of the petals, and these 2 colours blend quite nicely and you do end up with a very pretty flower. So just adding my water, moving the colour around and then wiping it up. Not letting things get too wet was perhaps part of what helped this flower come together a little bit more easily than flower number 1, which nearly went in the bin. I can tell you, I was quite frustrated, never wanting to watercolour anything again in my life. But now at the end of the process and the card's finished, I'm quite enjoyed it really. We all have those days, don't we? And certainly this was one of them. I was trying to get this card finished and video up for you because I knew it had been a few days since I'd had anything on my channel, and that's just when things tend to go wrong, isn't it? So anyway, there's a few more bloopers coming up where, yes, you'll see what happens. We all have those days, and it was one for me today. So sopping up colour as we go, adding and mopping and adding and mopping, and then I'm finally happy with the Carmine red colour, and I will start adding some of the yellow zig marker. So I'm going to leave you, continue to watch the process here, just adding the yellow marker now, and you'll see how I just blend it onto the edges of each petal and then move it around with the Carmine red until I'm happy with the light and dark on each petal. I'll be back again soon when the colouring is done. Okay, so there's the colouring or the watercolouring process that I've gone through, and then I decided I wanted to add a bit of stippling to the darker areas of the flowers. So I contemplated using a Copic marker to do it. I practiced a bit on the side with a Prismacolor pencil, which is what I am using here. I practiced with my Copics and ended up using the Prismacolor pencil for this stippling process. It's just lots of tiny little dots in the darkest portions of the petal. And it's then a matter of fussy cutting because I haven't got the dies, so just turning the petal in my left hand while the scissors stay pretty much at the same angle in my right. Now this is another piece of the Ranger watercolour card here, and this is going to be adhered to my card front. So I'm working out where I'm going to put the leaves from this stamp set. I used watercolour card because I thought I was going to colour some of the open leaves with some more of these ink markers, but I didn't end up doing that. So I do stamp on this with VersaFine Onyx Black, and it's a great black bold ink, which is fabulous, gives you a really beautiful outline, and I love those black leaves, they do look awesome. So wiping up and cleaning up my stamp, and then moving my card in the MISTI and working out where the next cluster of leaves is going to go. And of course my flowers are going to go in the center there somewhere, and working out where this next spray of leaves will sit, and then I'll be able to place it into my MISTI and stamp again with the VersaFine Onyx Black. Now this was another problem that I had today, because first of all went well and that looked fabulous, and stamped a couple of times to get it nice and bold, and yes, great, happy with that. But I had to cut down that piece because I was going to use some black and white striped paper, as you can see here, from an MFT set paper pack. So I put that on the side, and then when I went off to trim my card, look at all the black smudges. Oh my gosh. So I get out my eraser that takes away the ink, and it is a great little eraser, this one. What's it called? Hang on, I'll check. Okay, it is a sand eraser, mono sand eraser from Tombow, and it does a great job of removing ink, don't get me wrong. And I thought, right, I'm good, that's fine. Yep, not many smudges left, you can hardly see. I'll stick that down, and I left it there, came back a couple of hours later and looked at my card and thought, what the heck is that? There were smudges everywhere. So I got out another piece of cardstock that wasn't watercolour, it's just plain, stamped it all again, adhered it down, upside down, pulled it off, turned it around the right way. I told you, one of those days, but we get there in the end. And hopefully you think my card's okay in the end, because I was quite happy with it by the very end, thankfully. So wipe up or erase a couple of ink marks again, and then it's time for my tiny weeny little sentiment, which is also from the Wallpaper art stamp set, and then time to adhere, first of all, this more yellow flower straight to the card front, and then the bolder flower on the top with some foam tape. And that brings me to the end of my card making process today. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my bloopers, and well, sometimes we have days like that. Thanks for being here. I'll be back again soon.